And welcome to Matrix Talk.
Greetings.
And today is, it's Pearl Harbor Day.
It is December the 7th.
December the 7th, the date that lives in infamy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a Wednesday. And if you're listening on a recording, you know that it's December the 7th, 2022. Because believe you me, I just read a report from my old freeconferencecall.com.
Oh, man.
And that's from 2005, and people are still watching those.
How about that?
Crowdcasts. So what's that, 17 years old?
Yeah. Wow.
Oh.
Wow.
So anyways, so here we are. And we'll do a little housekeeping. Oh, Hill's in from Bucks County. Julio is in from Portland, Oregon. And please, that's the first order of business, or one of the first orders, is go and type in where you're from, because it's cool to see where you're from. Kirkland, no,
still in Kirkland. Andrew.
Whoa.
Oh, ho, ho.
How do you spell that? Hey, Jazz.
Oh,
Atoria?
Atoria.
Oh, the Netherlands is in. Oh, I've been to Utrecht, the Netherlands.
Utrecht. Nice.
I have. I've been there. That's weird.
Oh, that's where they did the act stuff years ago, right?
Yeah. I've actually been. Of course,
cool.
Netherlands not exactly huge, so you can get around that place.
London. Oh yeah. Okay. New Zealand. Maori word.
We are so international today. Oh my God.
Welcome again, Andrew.
We better go take a powder or something.
Yeah.
And also in the upper right part of your screen, if you're on your computer, Crete.
Oh, Crete, yeah. Illinois.
And
AKA Raymond. Yes.
Raymond.
We know you. How's the truck, Raymond?
Anyway, follow us in the upper right-hand corner.
Sold. Oh, okay. Hope you made some video on that.
And you guys have been chatting in like crazy, which is great. And don't forget about the green button. What can they do on the green button?
Patreon. They can support us.
Buy us coffee. Buy us coffee.
Yeah.
So
and
you can buy Phil and I a cup of coffee. Sign up for Patreon. We literally drink the coffee. I have some right here.
Right here.
And we Phil and I do not go long. So mine is in a United Nations mug. So
well, I'm in an old weary, or one of the original Matrix mugs I'm drinking.
Yeah, every once in a while somebody makes a Matrix mug.
It didn't come out so hot, so we never put it up on the shelf. But I got my prototype here.
There we are. Okay, and we're about to do in another minute or so an intermediate ACT training. Obviously, we're going to use the ACT matrix because we have matrix everywhere, and that'll lead us into something like verbal Aikido.
Yes, we will get there.
That'll be on our
journey. The dojo by the end of the training here.
That'll be on our journey.
Yep.
Toward the end of our journey.
Towards you.
And thank you all for being here. This is way cool. Look at all these way cool people. Wow, neat. 104. That's close enough for
good enough.
We can do it. Okay, so folks, a little preamble. Some of you will, even if you show up 17 years from now, you'll be showing up for ACT training. Okay, so that's the way I say it is acceptance and commitment training and therapy, because training came first, then came therapy. So there's two T's to it. And you may have read a book and it might be complicated to you. And so we simplify it. And the way we simplify this ACT process, and you'll finally see that the outcome of ACT is a process. So, and then you'll go, well, what's that?
What do you mean? So,
okay, we'll show it to you.
Yeah, here you go.
And I'm going to make Phil large. And the process looks like that, at least in diagram form. And you imagine your senses up there at the top, your 5 senses, plus any more you want to throw in, proprioception and such. And then you go down to the bottom and there's your mind. And by the way, that represents noticing the difference between your sensory experiencing and your mental experiencing. Horizontal line has satisfaction. That's feelings of satisfaction over to the right. And it has feelings of relief over to the left. And that represents noticing the difference between how it feels to be satisfied versus how it feels to be relieved. There you go. And to get this baby started, we go to the lower right-hand quadrant and we ask the question, who's important to you? And we answer that question. Literally, I'll show you. I'll type in, my wife is important to me. And I would invite you guys to type it in. Who's important to you?
I'm going to
We got some
children.
kids and children.
And son.
Yay. That's how you do it. And so I kid you not, folks, that's how you get started in the process, this process of doing acceptance and commitment stuff. We got pets. I love pets.
Oh, yeah.
In all different varieties. This is cool stuff. Excellent. Now, over in the lower left quadrant, we put the yucky stuff that shows up inside of us, like fear. Fear is the basic one. Your amygdala says, be afraid. And there is fear. It doesn't feel very good, right? Turns out there's a whole bunch of other thousands of yucky things that can show up. Literally, folks, in the English language, there's thousands of them. But other than fear, some hit parade items might be a headache. Yeah, that's yucky. There is yucky right there, a headache. Anybody else got any yucky stuff that occasionally shows up inside of you? And we're at the bottom of the matrix, so it's inside stuff. So stuff that shows up. Overwhelmed. I have had that show up myself. Chloe?
Yeah.
Ooh, and Andrew has had
anxiety.
Yep, that's a popular one. It's on all the magazines and stuff, anxiety.
Imposter syndrome.
That's also a popular one, a little more esoteric, but still popular. Imposter syndrome. And garden variety thing you hear a lot about is depression. That also shows up in the magazines, newspaper articles, such a lot.
Not good enough.
Whoa, I like that.
That's really cool. I like that.
That's sort of a Woody Allen kind of.
Really? I wouldn't be a member of any group that would have me as a member, right? Groucho Marx. Not good enough.
I like it. Okay. Now in the upper left, and when we go to the upper part, we're doing observable behaviors. So in the upper left quadrant, it's observable behaviors that we do to get relief. So like fear, for example, fear. Well, I might run. You see me running away to get away from whatever's leading to fear. That's my go-to relief move right there.
We could draw that to all of them, really.
I'm big on imbibing with the caffeine. No doubt about that. Headache. Oh, I take a little Tylenol myself, or acetaminophen. But with that, we can put any drug.
Withdrawal.
Ooh, that's a pop. Avoid. I like Diane. She managed to do avoid. Yes,
that's avoiding with gusto.
That's gusto avoiding. Done it myself. Definitely. You can tell with this a little bit of noticing.
Procrastinate.
Ooh, that's pretty good. You can't see me procrastinating because I'm not doing anything. That's a joke there. We're just full of them today. You will quickly see, if you do a little bit of noticing, that your life is filled with lots and lots of relief moves. There are many of them. It's just part of life. It's
Tons.
Tons of them. I mean, partially it's your amygdala's driving them. It's having to do relief moves.
Yep.
The yucky stuff.
Keep her going.
However, there is some stuff in the upper right where we get satisfaction. And those are basically called approach moves, the way we approach who and what's important to us. So like, for instance, my wife, I might go talk to her, and that's an observable behavior. You can see me talking to my wife. Like, oh, I see Kevin over there talking to Mary Alice.
And likewise, you could see me going for a walk with my son.
Oh, and
Dina could be hugging.
Dina says you could give somebody a hug. You can run up and down the street and give random people.
Really, just pass them out.
That'd be fun. Children.
Children. Oh, we could hug the children.
Play
She likes it. Play a game.
games, and they love to play. Exactly.
And we got the pets.
Oh, it always starts with feeding them.
Share food. There we go.
Yeah, I mean all my pets want fed first thing in the morning. So you get the idea. These things you do, and often they lead to satisfaction. Yeah, I did that. Cool. And to make this into a point of view, which is what we're looking to do, to make it into a process, we put the word notice right in the middle, and we ask ourselves this contemplative question. And that is, do I think I might have the opportunity to notice who's important to me, and yucky stuff, and relief moves, and satisfaction moves showing up in my life in the next week or so? Today's Wednesday, so between this Wednesday and next Wednesday, what do you think? Now, I will say yes for myself. Yes, I will have the opportunity. Doesn't mean I will notice, but I'll have the opportunity to notice.
Oh, yeah.
There's Sanjay says yes, right. Once you get into this noticing stuff, folks, you'll notice that you don't notice. You forget.
Whole moments go by when you don't notice.
You go, oh, yeah. Automatic pilot.
That's right.
Right. It'll autopilot will kick in and you won't notice. But that doesn't mean the opportunity hasn't been there. So hopefully you grab a few opportunities and notice.
Yep.
There we go. And that is the process. Now, in doing that process, when you do the notice, you automatically step back from yourself. Metaphorically, yes, you're not really stepping anywhere. But nevertheless, how do you remind yourself to notice? I haven't had a bit of luck with that.
Yeah.
I just have to wait for it to show up.
It just kind of is there.
I'll just go, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And what I would do is like show up to lots of these crowdcasts.
Yeah.
You know what? I cheat. We do these crowdcasts.
Yeah. Well, it's right. We
So,
build in lots of opportunities.
we get reminded of noticing a lot.
Right.
But that's what you do is you remind, you have notice on lots of Post-it notes all over the place. And,
and you show it to people a lot. The more you show it to people, the more you notice too.
Or you'll notice. So you set up situations that are going to trigger noticing, a way of looking at it. That's how we do it. But to actually say, I vow I'm going to remember to notice that. I go on autopilot and forget.
Yep.
Right. So back to, what you're doing with this process, with this notice, is linguistically, literally, with language, you're taking a step back from the self. Okay, you're stepping back from the self, but instead of doing it physically, you're doing it with language, and that stepping back with language is called the observer self. You'll see it in the ACT books. and you'll see it in other books for that matter. It's called The Observer Self. And we all know that you're not doing anything. Nobody can say, oh, I can see Phil, and Phil's using his observer
Yeah,
self.
he's
right
pulled
now.
his observer self out.
Right.
There it is.
We can't see Phil doing observer self. It's you that knows that or not. So, however, it's a known phenomenon, and we all go, oh, yeah, I know what that is. I know the observer self. And that's that step back. And what that automatically brings with it is psychological flexibility.
Poof.
Boom. It just shows up like that, just with that observer self, meaning, and as this is a literal thing, you're seeing things from a broader perspective, the big picture, let's say. So in that stepping back and looking at the broader perspective, you gain some elements of psychological flexibility, something to the order of, gee, I could do this, or I could do that, or I could do that. And so that's that flexibility showing up, right? Instead of I'm bound and determined to do this one and only thing.
That's got to be it.
Which is not flexible, right? So that's what you're going for, and that's the target of ACT. So the reason we do the matrix is because it quickly gets us at that, in quotes, target of psychological flexibility. So it gets us there. And Phil and I know that everything else is real easy to forget. And we can sort of kind of set our lives up so we show this to people a lot. And then we remember to notice and use the observer self and get some psychological flexibility. Now, actually, you don't have to do anything in particular after the psychological flexibility shows up.
Nope.
That will drive, I know, some people crazy. Like,
yep.
What?
You have to do something. You must.
There must be more exercises.
Yes.
There must
What's
be
going
more
on here.
things.
That's it. Can't be.
Phil, we had a long discussion about this yesterday.
We did.
Here's what, folks, you won't.
It ain't gonna happen.
If somebody else assigns you stuff, you won't do
You're
it.
not gonna do it.
And if you assign yourself stuff, you won't do it.
You're gonna forget it.
I mean, we're all really crappy at doing stuff. No, we do stuff, yeah, but it's a tricky thing to assign yourself to do things. You know? So instead, if you can just sort of, what do we call, fall into doing this?
Yes.
Fall into noticing, and every once in a while get some of that psychological flexibility on board. Well, sort of some magic happens.
Yeah.
You know,
Interesting things occur.
And some things occur. And this, now we're to intermediate. Okay. So now we're going to talk about the magic. So last time, really, we would have stopped here. This is it. That would be beginning ACT training.
Right here.
So now we're going to tell you a little bit more. We're going to say sort of some stuff of what's going on. And so what's going on with this is that ACT is based on a theory of language and cognition called relational frame theory, RFT for short. And a lot of people go, yeah, I hear those words and I have no idea what that means. And join the club. It's a little bit tough, but then again, it's not tough. If you do it like this, you're born. And I'll invite you to go back to the few moments right after you were born and recall stuff. And you're going to draw a blank. And the reason you're going to draw a blank is because you don't have any language to do it with. We use language even in our imaginings and our visual imaging and stuff. We use language. And so none of us really remember the few moments after birth. What we start remembering is after we get language. Aha. So language shows up inside of us, and then we start remembering. So that initial process of how you go from no language to language showing up inside of you, and then finally you verbalizing it, is this process of adding frames to sounds And there's where you get the name relational frame theory. So you're relating frames to sounds. Phil and I speak English, so we will use the English language. And one of the most popular ones, at least the one I like to use, is mom, M-O-M, mom. So it's going to be one of the very first sounds that you frame onto, mom. I'm not dissing dads. I'm a dad, but we'll stick with mom. We can say, what do you mean a frame? Well, how about a smell? A smell frame. Yeah, your mom smells a certain way. There you go. Very important. How about, the look of her face, the features of her face? When you look at her face, those features, right? There's that frame. How she dresses, because most, mom does a similar way, day in and day out. We all do that. Okay, so her clothes and stuff. That's another frame. These are frames of reference but then when you think the word mom, all of this stuff shows back up, right? And much, much, much more is framed onto that. I mean, come on. Food and hugs and kisses and lots and lots and lots and lots of stuff get framed onto mom. And it keeps happening, and in the midst of all those frames, you keep hearing the sound mom. So eventually you do that inside yourself, mom, and eventually the verbal stuff inside your brain gets hooked up to the muscles in your mouth and your larynx and stuff, and out comes mom. You say mom, and there you go. Now you got language, right? And from then on, it's all downhill from there, folks.
That's it. Show's over.
And what do we mean by that? What I mean, before then, you were totally psychologically flexible.
Yep.
Just total
Do
psychological flexibility.
anywhere I want.
And once you start adding language, each and every word shrinks that flexibility, brings it down. And so in the end, what can happen with all of that framing to that and literally tens of thousands of other words, that pretty soon you develop a story about you.
Ooh.
Right? You develop this story, and it starts with when you were born, right? And you go, oh yeah, I was born in X place, and here you go. And you can talk about your mom and dad if you have them, or if you didn't have them, brothers and sisters if you had them or didn't have them, friends, school. You get the idea of your story. You become this story. That's the me, right? And that's it. Phil's got it right there. That's the me has shown up. We don't know how long, and they do research on this and stuff to try and figure out when me shows up in a kid. Now it's sometime after language, the rudiments of language have shown up. But one day, this kid, you and I and everybody else is going to have this aha moment. And it's like, oh, wow, here's me. And there's...
There is.
There is somebody over there.
Mom. Usually mom, right?
And right then you're born. So
Yeah.
You're actually born twice, right? And I'm not talking the religious type. I'm talking
You're not born again.
The one for the physical thing. With the next is you language yourself, me, into existence. And now you're going to be framing all kinds of stuff onto me.
Yep.
And that frame of me is your story. That's your story. That's your autobiography. That is you.
Everybody comes with a story.
And the trick, according to ACT, is how flexible you can stay inside that story. So if you can stay pretty flexible, and be open to things and open to new stuff and this and that, you're probably okay, right?
Yep.
But if we've all known people who have, for whatever reason, grown very, very inflexible. I'll bring like somebody who's addicted to some substance, and their life revolves around the acquisition of and the taking of that substance. I'm almost reading from the DSM, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. And you look at them and go, and if you look at them in terms of flexibility, they're not.
Nope.
they're not. They're not flexible at all. So that's what we're referring to, and that's what ACT is about. If this theory of language and how frames get laid on to language, words, stories, all that stuff, and then how you can remain flexible inside that sea of language. Okay. And it's tricky.
Mm-hmm.
It is tricky
Very much.
to stay flexible because words are just so darned appealing.
Yes.
We get to where we can live inside of our heads.
Down here.
We have this rich fantasy world, and pretty soon we're playing the what ifs. What if this happened?
Oh yeah.
That what if da, 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 da. And literally your focus is inside your head. And if you'll look on the bookshelves or look out on the internet and under Steve Hayes, you'll see in 2005, Steve Hayes is the guy that wrote the original stuff on ACT. He wrote a book called Get Out of Your Mind and Into Your Life. And you see that process of that title. Really great title. It's exactly what we're talking about. How do you get out of this mental mind trap that we literally all get into because we have language? And how do you get out of it and really get back to noticing your five senses?
Up here.
That's the basic thing you're doing. And so what's happening is there's like three kinds of frames, and I'm not going to say all the different frames, but you can have a flexible frame added to a word or a story. You could have a neutral frame added to a word or a story, or you could have an inflexible. So flexible, neutral, inflexible.
Inflexible.
Okay. So believe you me, advertising wants to add inflexible frames to you. And you say, what do you mean? Well, they don't want you thinking of anything else to buy.
Buy my stuff.
Yeah, buy stuff. They don't want flexibility. They want you to march right down to the store and buy their stuff.
Buy my stuff now.
Now, right. So that's your inflexibility showing up. Versus you see somebody and they're going, oh, you can do this or you can do that or whatever. This is sort of that flexibility, this flexible person you met. And of course, tons of life is just neutral.
Yep.
It's not doing one or the other, just it's part of the story, but it's not really added anything. Guess what, folks? ACT, acceptance and commitment, training and therapy, boils down to adding flexible frames. That's it. Somebody shows up to you and they're essentially saying, I'm stuck.
Yeah, pretty much.
Essentially, that's what they're saying. And from an ACT point of view, that's how we interpret it. So they come in and they say, I'm depressed. Well, if you rephrase that and they say, yeah, if you look up depressed in the dictionary, you're going to see a picture of me. I am the epitome of
I equals depressed.
I equals depressed. That's stuck. Okay. I am anxious. Oh, I mean, literally, that's the same as saying I am Kevin.
Yeah. Oh, hello there, anxious. Nice to meet you.
Right. So you're naming yourself anxious. You're naming yourself. It's a bit of a joke, but then again, it's not. It's showing how inflexible that language is. And we're taught that, constantly reminded. I am this, I am that, I am successful, I am not successful, I'm an imposter. I'm an imposter. That's the imposter syndrome.
That's it.
Going out, right? And so that I am, remember the me. So when you do that, I am, take away the am and make it an equal sign.
I equal.
I equal that. Well, that's inflexible. So from this acceptance and commitment therapy, training and therapy point of view, really what you're going to be doing is adding flexible frames. And if any of you going, gee, I wonder what the hell he's talking about. How about metaphors? You ever heard of metaphors? Lots of ACT folks love metaphors. Metaphors is adding back a flexible frame to somebody's story. I am depressed. Oh, that reminds me of an interesting story. Would you like to hear this interesting story? Oh, okay. And now you tell them a metaphorical journey thingy story. And you say, well, that doesn't mean anything. Yeah, it does, because the person is with you and you just gave them a metaphor. You added a metaphor to their story. And one of the hopes is that you're adding flexibility to their story. To the point that eventually, sometime they go, you know what? I've noticed that if I say I am depressed, that's sticky. So I can say, I'm noticing depression showing up. Bingo.
There you go.
And that's a more flexible way of saying it. And so you'll hear Phil and I in our language, you'll hear us using those two words, showed up, a lot. You'll hear us say, and that's us being careful as we can to add flexible frames to things. And so that's essentially what you're doing. So now when you go back and read an ACT book, you're going to go, oh, this is
that's what they're up to.
That's what they're up to. It is exactly what they're up to. There's just a bazillion ways to do it. But it all comes down to that same thing of adding flexible frames. Now, as we've already alluded to, it's awfully easy to add inflexible frames as well.
Oh, yeah.
Advertisers, they want you, buy my product, period. But people all around you will try and get you stuck. Right?
Oh, yeah.
All kinds of life adds inflexible frames. And where you're from. Phil's from Philly. I'm from Oklahoma.
What do you do?
What do you do? What do you do for a living? That's an inflexible question. I mean, this is all about inflexibility. It's part of life. I'm not saying you're not going to be.
People ask these questions all the time.
Right, it's there, but to notice this psychological flexibility, this language stuff becoming more and less flexible is the ultimate goal of ACT. Really. Yep. That's what you're doing. You're noticing language. You're playing with language. You're keeping, as best you can, keeping language flexible. And it's a practice. It has to be a practice because each and every day you use language. And so after a while, you'll notice, here comes the noticing, folks. You'll notice the flexibility and inflexibility, and neither one, just neutral, of your language. You'll get to where you notice it. Right? And so here's what happens. So most of us, and you can do this inside yourself.
Yes.
Let me see. Somebody's called themselves an imposter. So you call yourself an imposter. I'm an imposter.
Cool.
Okay, quiz, folks. I am an imposter. Does that strike you as feeling flexible, neutral, or more flexible, neutral, or less flexible? I am an imposter. You can even say it this way: I have imposter syndrome.
Oh yeah.
Less,
Looks
exactly.
like people are going with less, Kevin.
Right. So inside, in it, I'm going to fess up. It sounds less flexible to me too.
I'm going to go there as well.
It definitely does. And so there you go. That's going on inside of you. So now inside of you, the response, because we respond to ourselves, right? We have a thought and then we respond to it. And then it just keeps on going. So you can respond to yourself with flexibility. So, or inflexibility. So let me see, inflexibility. I'm an imposter, so I'm just going to go to bed.
Ah,
I'm just going to give up and go to bed. Okay. To me, that sounds sort of inflexible, right?
Yep.
That's your classic relief move, right? But instead, I might respond to I am an imposter with something else. What might I respond with to myself? Because it showed up. I couldn't help it. It just happened.
there it is. It's right there
I,
on the
I
top.
woke up at 4:00 in the morning and it just
That
popped
thought.
into my head.
Yep.
I am an imposter.
Oh, rats. There it is. Again.
And that's the initial response. Oh, rats, there it is again. But that's not flexible.
Right.
That's inflexible. Oh, rats, there it is again. It's just more inflexibility added to the inflex. So inside yourself, how do you want to respond? It's as easy as falling off a log. You're just not seeing it. Okay. So
I'm having the thought.
that's it's okay. Sanjay got it. He's played with it a lot.
Yes,
The
yes.
basic one, the basic move is I am noticing that I'm having the thought I am an imposter. That's it. So you use the observer self. Remember that good old observer self? So you use your observer self to back up off of it a little bit and say, I am noticing I'm having this thought, this imposter syndrome thought, whatever it is. And you back up from it. And that's adding a flexible frame. You just added a flexible frame to your imposter. Why do I talk about it adding flexible frames inside yourself? Best I can tell, that's who I have the most control over. I've really mightily tried to control other people with dismal results.
Oh. Very, very bleak indeed. Very bleak.
That's not worked out. Well, for me, I mean, can I learn little things like this that I can think to myself to add flexibility? Because the inflexibility is going to show up. By definition, it shows up.
There it is. First thing.
Right.
Rats.
It just shows up. So then you add flexibility. And the noticing, by the way, you notice that I put noticing in. I'm noticing that I'm having imposter syndrome thoughts. Okay, there's the noticing show up. And that's the accidental noticing that we're referring to. That's, you get into that and you're adding some flexibility and you're trying to stay loose. Because if you wake up and at 4 a.m. with the imposter syndrome thing and you roll that all the way till 10 a.m.
Woohoo. That's a rough road to hoe there.
Well, it's not going to be any fun, right? So we're going to try and add some flexible frames to it. And we're just being open, and that's the acceptance. Okay. So we accept that imposter syndrome thoughts show up. We just accept that. It's part of life. It's going to show up. And feelings of depression and anxiety and fear and all kinds of other stuff, they're going to show up. They're just going to. However, right after, I have this teeny little space of response of how I myself can respond to these things.
Come on up.
Right. And I can respond with flexibility instead of inflexibility. There you go. That's That's the training. Remember, training and therapy, whichever, that's the training. That's you're responding to your own language with flexibility. You're adding flexible frames to your own language. It's easy and not easy.
Oh yeah. It's devilishly easy.
Yeah, devilishly easy. and devilishly easy to forget to do.
Oh my God. It whizzes right on by you.
And that's what we're talking about. You'll forget to notice.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be free for a day or two or more.
yeah.
And I'll
Yep.
be like, oh yeah. I've been mightily hooked and stuck for and not noticing one iota. You know? That's okay. Here now I'm noticing. Now we go. Now we can add some flexibility. Let's add some flexibility back in. Let's start adding. So, first order of business is you add flexibility to your own language. You respond to yourself with flexibility whenever you can remember to notice and do that. You will not even be close to 100% at that.
Yes.
It's a practice. I've done this with tens of thousands of people. I haven't met anybody show back up and say, "Oh yeah, I'm good. I do it all the time." No. Worked with a whole lot of people that say, "Yeah, I do that some of the time now, and it really helps." There you go.
Yeah, we hear that a lot.
Yeah, some of the time is cool. That works really well, right? So you do it with yourself. So now, believe it or not, when you go out and add and interact with other people, and you can type in the chat if you had this experience, sometimes other people say words in your direction. And those words can now be analyzed basically by sorting them into one of three categories. Those words that just came at me are add flexibility, or they're neutral, or they add inflexibility. What do you think, folks? Do you think that at times people send inflexible words and sentences in your direction? What do you think? I will see if anybody answers.
Perhaps they've had an experience like that.
Maybe they've had an experience of somebody else. Often. I'm betting these saying often to, it's the inflexibility. They throw inflexibility at you. Yes. One, that's the thing of influence, right? Because if I'm trying to influence you, guess what? I'm not looking for flexibility. Remember, that's the word influence. You say, oh, that's always bad. No, it's not. What if I wanted a date?
I'm going for inflexibility.
I'm going for inflexibility. I want her to say yes and go out on a date.
To me. Not to the guy next to me or the guy around.
So, no, it's not a bad, it's not, it's part of life.
Okay.
However, nevertheless, we can notice if flexibility is being added or inflexibility or neutrals being added. And of course, there's the, once people basically look at you and say F-U-C-K and really try
That's a good one.
Try and get you.
Yeah.
And at those points, if you've practiced this a lot, you can then do this. You can go, oh, you just said, I'm being nice today. F-U-C-K. You just said that. I have this diagram that I've shown you. Remember? Where does it go? Or even without the diagram, you might say, that F-U-C-K you just said, were you trying to add flexibility to me, or were you trying to add inflexibility to me?
Where are you going with that FUC?
Where are you going with that? Right. Was it a proposition?
Yeah, really. Talking relationship here?
And notice I've taken it and I've mucked with it. And that's what we mean by verbal aikido. That's, we're adding flexible frames to now the words coming at us. Now, if you've wanted to cheat like Phil and I do, and you have the
Right
chart up there,
Yep.
you can say, where does it go?
Where does it go?
What was that, a lower right FUCK, or was it a lower left FUCK? Was it an upper left? Was it upper?
Where'd you put it?
Goes, oh wow, never really saw it that way before. And we just added flexibility to that. But if you don't have it, you can just do the standard. Gee, where are you going with that? Trying to add flexibility? Trying to add inflexibility? Where are you going with that? Right, and you're playing, now you're playing with language, meaning you're adding flexible frames. Play is add flexible frames, and that's what you're going for. And that's how you do that. It's all about playing with language. ACT is totally based on relational frame theory, which is a theory of language and cognition that essentially says you get stuck in your language. So the whole enterprise is about being less stuck. You can't not be stuck. Language requires that you be stuck.
Gotta have some.
But in order for it to have meaning, it has to be sticky. It has to. However, it can get too sticky. And so this is about adding some oil back in, your little
Lubrication.
little lubrication added in there.
Little DW40 in there.
DW40 on your words, stay flexible. And so the first rule is do it with yourself. I am a horrible person. Oh, gee,
Ooh,
I just noticed that I was calling myself a horrible person. See how quickly I flipped it over to noticing, right? So you can do that. That's inside yourself. Or, so-and-so just called me a horrible person. Gee, where were you going with that? Were you trying to add flexibility to my life?
Yeah. What's this all about here?
Instead of the usual, what do you mean saying something like to me, you asshole? And
Which is now your flexibility.
now you just threw inflexibility at them, and you're going to end up with a fight. So sometimes you feel like fighting, whatever, but you can go back and forth and do that. But now you've got, this is the stuff of ACT. This is how you play. And so when you hear somebody do, say, I am depressed in a Donald Duck voice.
Right.
Never heard people do that.
Well, I have a friend of mine growing up. He was the best Donald Duck imitator ever.
Right. Well, you'll have Steve Hayes and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that Donald Duck voice added to whatever is a flexible frame. It's playing with language.
Singing it.
And they'll say, sing it. I am depressed.
Or you can march around the room while you're saying it.
Yeah, exactly. And you're going, well, that's just crazy. But it is crazy because it's adding flexible frames to this internal language that we all have. And we can all play it. It's really easy to play. So all of these things you see going on in ACT trainings, if you'll look at it from the point of view of adding flexible frames to language, a ton of it will make sense.
Ooh,
really well. Now, what it adds to that, what the thing, and we talked about this last time, is, in traditional ACT, they'll talk about values.
Right.
For Phil and I, we'll talk about who's important to you. Basically, the question is all of this working to get you where you want to go in life? Because without that question, you're just floating around. You're doing this for no particular reason. So why do we want to have more flexibility? So we have a wider repertoire of behaviors available to us to get us where we want to go in life. That's what it's about. So you stay flexible in your pursuits of the life that you want. Doesn't have to be perfectly defined. You just got to sort of kind of know which direction you want to go in life, which is plenty good enough. And then you can do this analysis. Is it working to get me where I want to go? And the reason you want to keep the flexibility is you want to keep new behaviors available to you.
Keep new responses.
New
Generate
responses. Right. Available to you.
Right.
Or you can just become a heroin addict and have
And
an
just have
extraordinarily
one.
restricted
Boom.
behavioral repertoire.
Right.
And really, I mean, listen, folks, I've dealt with 100, 200, 300, I don't know, a lot of heroin addicts in my time. And I like them. I really fine. But my God, they were stuck. And even if they knew they were stuck, they stayed stuck. Getting out of that stickiness of that. I got that. They're really stuck in what's called a relief move, stuck loop, relief stuck loop, where the craving for heroin shows up, and there's only one way to fix it: get more heroin, right?
Get it.
So the acquisition of heroin and the taking of heroin and everything just becomes like 24 hours a day. It's just all but 24
Job.
hours a day. So those are very stuck people, as opposed to people that are going, hey, I'm flexible.
And I got pain.
Right. I got pain, I got suffering, but I don't have to just live my life to relieve that stuff. No. I got other stuff I can do. I got a lot of stuff to choose from here, right? And then it becomes this feel. So that's what you're up to with this. It's pretty simple. It's just hard. Or is it hard and simple? Or is it what?
No, both. It's both and.
It is. It is a crazy thing.
It really is.
But it is very entertaining to do, and I hope all of you give a whirl at doing it.
Yes.
Now you say, when all is lost, just go back to who's important to you.
Down here.
And by the way, folks, you say, I don't remember to notice, but I do remember to ask myself who's important to me. That tends to be the thing I remember better.
That's good enough most of the time.
And usually that leads to noticing.
Right.
Okay.
I'll take you right back up here.
All right. So if I recall who's important to me, pretty quick, I'm going to be noticing. So and Phil's the same way.
Yep.
We both use that. So if you really, how do we do it? We remind ourselves who's important.
Right there.
Then we get to the noticing, and then eventually you can get to notice, gee,
Now you
is this stuff that I'm doing working to get me where I want to go? And then new stuff's going to show up tomorrow. And then,
you bet your bippy.
And some of the stuff that shows up every once in a while is really crap.
Yeah, it ain't worth keeping track of.
That, I mean, when people die and get sick,
Yeah.
the shit, man.
Right.
Oh, man, this is rough.
Hard stuff.
This is hard stuff, and then during those hard stuff times, it's difficult to stay loose.
Yep.
It just is. It hurts. The stuff hurts,
Pain.
and in that pain, you'll forget to notice.
It'll draw you down.
So then it's how long is it going to be before you pop up back out of it? So that's what you're doing, but it works. It's a fun process, wicked fun process. And from here, where would people go? What we usually do, folks, this is all you ever need.
Yeah.
We will at times we'll do a Friday thing. We're not going to do it this Friday.
No.
But some Fridays we'll do an advance, and we talk about the fancy. We go a little more in depth into RFT. We just did enough RFT today.
Yeah. This is street level RFT we're giving you.
Street level, and we're also giving you street level functional contact.
Yeah, much so.
So And the advance is nothing but mental masturbation, really. It's not. You don't need
Deep
it.
dives.
Can I say that? Mental
Yeah,
masturbation?
well, you just did. So
Oh, okay.
I noticed that you just said that.
Really, as far as anything you need, no. No.
So
You
this
don't
will
need-
get you there.
this will get you there. The street level stuff is what you need. And by the way, folks, that's what I and Phil we were working on.
Yeah.
Was street level act. Literally, you meet somebody, they're in dire straits
Yep.
on the streets, they're asking for help.
Yep.
You know, and beyond, give them food and shelter and stuff.
Yep.
You can do that, great. But then they're saying, but I'm stuck. How do I get unstuck? Okay. Well, the theory goes that it's language that's getting you stuck. So let's see if we can muck with it some. Here we go. And they
Yeah.
probably don't know that language is getting them stuck. Right? And, best I can tell, and there's some research on this as well, that RFT notion is a workable notion. People do get stuck in language.
Yep.
And it does reduce your behavioral repertoire. So that is true. So our interventions to add flexibility to language, by and large, work. They don't fix things. They're not for fixing.
We're not trying to fix things.
They're not trying to fix anything. They're trying to get you in this process of noticing more options.
Yep.
And trying them out and seeing them if they work.
You gotta go and do them at the end of the day.
Believe you me, you'll think of lots of options that don't work.
Oh, yeah.
You won't know. You ain't gonna know they work until you try them, and then you got to notice if they work or not. That's a whole different thing.
Oh yeah.
Your mind will fool you and say, "Oh yeah, that worked."
Yeah.
Like no.
Whoa.
But we all have that problem too.
Hold on there.
Don't have to worry about it, folks. The flexibility will take care of that. It'll show up just fine. So there you go. That's the intermediate stuff. But now you know how to do verbal aikido on yourself. Remember, I'm calling myself a bad word. Oh, I'm noticing I'm calling myself.
Yeah, there you go.
That's the verbal aikido on yourself. And then somebody's saying, hey, you're an effing idiot. Oh, did you mean to add flexibility or detract from my flexibility with that? Or if you have the diagram up, you can say, oh, where does that effing
Where would
idiot
you put that up there?
Where would you put that effing idiot up here? And that's verbal aikido. That's moving it off of you, not where you don't take it straight on. You don't want to, but in lots of stuff of life, the better you get at not taking language on directly, the better off you are.
Oh,
It's a lot easier existence if you're not taking
Yep.
it all on directly. It's easier. So there we go. We'll be back next Monday.
one day,
It's not a holiday, right? No.
more or less, something like that.
We'll be back Monday to
Yep.
do something. Sometimes we do beginning, sometimes we don't. Right?
We'll add a new wrinkle.
Be flexible
Yeah,
in our behavioral
we're flexible and we notice what shows up.
And sometimes we notice something
Sometimes.
going up. And we do
Not all the time. Sometimes.
We'll do something different on Monday.
Yeah, we might.
In the meantime, we'll play around. That's it.
That's it.
I had a good time. Hopefully
I
you
had a
guys
blast.
did.
It was fun. Hope you guys did too.
I'll go see if I notice anything.
Yeah,
I know the opportunities will be there.
they'll be out there.
Yeah, they'll be there.
All right.
Bye-bye, folks.
Take care.